Have you guys ever heard of Postal One? I mean, you probably have heard the phrase passed around because everyone knows about Postal 2. But does anyone really remember the younger, darker, edgier brother that Postal One happens to be? Well, for those of you who haven't, I might as well describe to you what Postal One is. Think hatred before hatred was hatred. You see, in the late 90s, the world was having quote-unquote epidemics with the issue of spree shooting. Now, it wasn't just happening in America, and this was before it was as prevalent as it was today, but spree shooting was a genuine fear in the zeitgeist back in America that day. So, in 1997, a bunch of people decided to get together and make some controversial game capitalizing off the inevitable fear that some people have. However, Postal One is a more disturbing game than you might think. This isn't a game where you're just, I want to destroy the world because humanity's a disease and I'm the cure. On the face of it, that's what it is. But it really immerses you in this general feeling of unease, discomfort, and a plethora of other emotions. Mostly, the game is silent, and you can't really have any choice besides kill yourself or kill everyone else. And that's right, this is a game where there is a suicide button where your character takes his weapon, says, I don't want to live here anymore, or something along those lines, and then shoots himself. There's no music, just the sounds of people crying, begging for their lives, screaming because they got shot, and the sounds of bullets and fire in the background. Now, that's not enough for most gamers to get scared, but back in the day when music and all that jazz wasn't very prevalent, to be sitting there on a computer playing a game where you're silently just shooting people, it can get a little disturbing. The loading screens and main menu music is also disturbing in its own way. Hell, you've probably been listening to it for the last couple of minutes. This is the actual music played within the game, and as you can tell, it's just a disturbing compilation of groans and growls playing in the background. Oftentimes when you go into another menu, or rather to a new area, which most of the times you had to kill everyone mercilessly and just move on. I should also mention that not in every stage will the police come and stop you, meaning that there are several stages within the game where you're quite literally just shooting defenseless, unarmed civilians. Anyway, every time you switch to a new level, the droning music comes on, and you'll get a message like this. As you can see on screen, there is some weird text that is very hard to read. But if you actually do pay attention, there are actual dates applied to this, and it's written like a journal. 10/18/97. Furious Horrifiles materialize against the cavern wall and sunder the earth into dust. Come, little insects, and see the web we've woven. Now, on the face of it, you guys may be thinking that this is just the scrawlings of a madman. But if you indulge me for just a moment, take a look at the image on screen. Now, you may notice that it just kind of looks like a bunch of jumbled pixels that are in a vaguely red, orangey shape. But if you really look at it, you may notice that it actually forms a coherent image. Now, this is the transition for the mines, and if you pay attention, you'll see that in the very back, there is a shadowy figure with impossible proportions. An arm that goes past the knee, and another arm that seems to be raised in a fist-like format that seems to go all the way up to his head. His arms are incredibly long and almost nightmarish. His head is almost like a square, and in general, it is a disturbing image to see. And this isn't just a part of the cave, no. There is distinctly human features about that creature. If you go lower into the image, you'll see a man laying on the ground with some skulls tied to a rock next to him, or something. It is really hard to tell because of the low quality of the image. The person talks about insects that need to be killed and something along those lines. But what makes me think that this is different than your obvious spree killing is this image itself. As you can tell, it seems to suggest that someone besides the postal dude is taking part. You can see a man dead with a very grotesque image in the background. And this isn't the only place where you'll find this type of image either. Oftentimes, as you play through the games, you'll find models and figures that don't really feel like they belong, and at first they may just seem like low-resolution human models, but if you pay attention, they may have some features that will disturb you, such as missing limbs, odd facial features, and just generally malformed body shapes. It's very weird and disturbing the more you look into this game. But nonetheless, why don't we take a look at the game story itself? You're the postal dude. There's a moving van right outside of your small, probably dirt cheap house, and it seems as though you're being kicked out. So, the only thing you know what to do is that you start shooting people. But, judging by the written text that is in the game, it suggests that you've been having odd and emotionally disturbed feelings for a while. As the game progresses, you kill people, police, unarmed civilians, and even a marching band, until eventually you make it to the school. Now, if you make it this far without killing yourself literally in the game, your character will have a mental breakdown, unable to shoot the school, and he'll be taken to an asylum. My general belief is that something drove the postal dude into thinking that everyone around him was a messed up, horrible representation of humanity. And only when he got to the school and saw the children who were just learning, playing, and having fun, as opposed to focus on some other mundane, stressful task that everyday life has to present, that he had a mental breakdown, realizing that he killed people for no reason, and realizing that he had been led astray, possibly by these dark figures that keep on reappearing. But the theory does not end there. He goes to the asylum, wrecked and emotionally unstable. Everyone around him is just looking more and more weird and grotesque, and it starts having an effect on his mental psyche. So, when he's thrown into the padded room, he tries to imagine himself in a better place. Now, we can all imagine that someone who'd be willing to mercilessly kill people in a manner that is incredibly brutal, such as firebombing, shotgunning, as someone's pleading to the ground, walking up to him, and hatred-style shooting him in the face of a shotgun. We can imagine that someone like him is quite fucked up. Hearing the news over maybe some internal monitor that some security guard may be watching, he hears about some celebrities, new people, and some generally, well, unlikable people. He hears about the gaming protests that occurred in 2004 by people like Jack Thompson. Or maybe he's hearing about just general situations that's maybe happening, even Gary Coleman. And when he goes to sleep, he simply dreams himself as a normal person like everybody else. Except mundanity is kind of hard to follow when you're the postal dude. And as such, he will oftentimes act out and kill people and try to make his situation even better. Maybe he'll justify it because there are terrorists and they shot him first. Or maybe those evil gaming protesters just wanted to kill all the gamers and he needed to stop that. Or perhaps he's just broken at this point, deciding to cut off heads, urinate on bodies, and do whatever the hell he pleases. As he's listening to the news, TV, and in general other worldly things, his dreams start to become different and focusing on different mundane tasks that he can no longer enjoy due to his own mental illness. He has a desire to be normal, but he simply can't, which would account for why the first game is so dark, realistic, and disturbing, while the second game is silly, to say the least. It's a madman's playhouse, and similar to how the Joker acts, he finds humor in gory, crude humor. Crude humor that he probably saw in a cartoon somewhere, but decided to act out in his own dream. Let's say the dreams continue to get larger and larger. 9/11 happens, and he's now killing all those Osama bin Laden looking dudes. I don't know. I just want to say that the Postal One game is incredibly disturbing, and if you take a look at it, it's some pretty fucked up software. But if you get the chance to play it, I would like to let you know that the gameplay is really hard to get into, and even though the game is quite disturbing, it's not the funnest. Basically, it's hatred before hatred was hatred. It's a controversial game back then, and it's controversial back now. But the darker themes that the story suggests, and the loose connection between the two games, makes me think that there might be a closer link between them. If you guys have any suggestions for this theory, why don't you let me know in the comment section below? Or if you'd like to support the channel, please subscribe or leave a comment or like the video or favorite it. Anything you do on this video helps me out more than you can know, and it helps me make content for people like you. So please, if you don't really want to do anything and didn't like the video, whatever. Have a good one.